Someone you love is going to die. You already know this. You have always known this. And yet, when it happens, nothing in your modern world will fully prepare you for what comes next. The paperwork, the calls to make, the strange silence in a house that used to have noise in it, the moment you reach for your phone to tell them something before you remember. Grief feels like a private, personal, modern problem. But the real answer is far stranger, because humans have been dying for as long as humans have existed. And for almost all of that time, the people left behind did something about it. Something deliberate, something ritualized, something that tells us, if we look closely enough, exactly what we are. The story of how your ancestors handled death is not a story about the past. It is a story about the thing inside you that still does not know what to do when someone is gone. Start with the oldest evidence we have. In a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger and his team made a discovery in 2015 that shook the entire field of human origins. Deep inside a cave in a chamber that could only be reached by crawling through passages less than 8 inches wide, they found bones, hundreds of them, belonging to at least 15 individuals of a species called Homo Naledi, a species with a brain roughly 1/3 the size of yours, a species that, by every prior assumption, should not have had the cognitive capacity to care about its dead. And yet, the bodies were there, placed deliberately, in a chamber so remote, so difficult to reach, that the only explanation that held up to scrutiny was intentional disposal of the dead. Not predators dragging carcasses, not flooding carrying bones. Deliberate placement. By creatures who should not, according to everything we thought we knew, have been capable of meaning anything by it. That discovery pushed the origin of mortuary behavior back by hundreds of thousands of years. Before Homo sapiens, before modern human cognition, before language most likely. Something older than all of that was already refusing to simply leave its dead behind. Your instinct to mark a death did not begin with civilization. It began before your species did. Now move forward in time, to the Neanderthals. For decades, Neanderthals were dismissed as brutish, unfeeling, cognitively inferior cousins. But the archaeological record tells a different story. At Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, archaeologist Ralph Selecki uncovered Neanderthal remains surrounded by dense clusters of pollen, flower pollen, from at least 8 different species, some of them known to have medicinal properties. The interpretation, debated but never fully overturned, was that flowers had been placed on the body, that someone had gathered them, that someone had stood over a dead Neanderthal and done something that looked unmistakably like a funeral. Neanderthals also buried their dead in a curled position, knees drawn to chest, the same fetal position a living body instinctively assumes when it wants to feel safe. Whether that positioning was intentional symbolism or practical necessity, no one can say for certain, but it was consistent. It was repeated. It was a pattern. And patterns, in archaeology, are the closest thing to intention you can find. Something in them could not just walk away. Something in you cannot either. Anthropologist Barbara King, who spent decades studying animal grief and the origins of human belief, argues that what we see in the fossil record is not primitive superstition. It is the earliest expression of a mind that had developed the capacity to understand loss, to feel the absence of someone who was supposed to be there, to recognize that a body that once moved and spoke and mattered had stopped, and to find that recognition unbearable enough to respond to it. Grief, in this framework, is not a weakness. It is a symptom of attachment, and attachment in social species is survival. Your ancestors who bonded deeply with their group members lived longer, hunted better, protected their children more effectively. The pain of losing them was the biological cost of the bond that kept everyone alive. Ritual was what emerged when a brain became complex enough to need somewhere to put that pain. Now move further forward, into the world of early Homo sapiens. 70,000 years ago, at a site called Border Cave in South Africa, researchers found the remains of an infant buried with a perforated shell. A shell that had been deliberately pierced, likely worn as an ornament, placed in the grave of a child who never lived long enough to wear it. Someone had thought about what that child might have carried with them. Someone had made a choice. Across the archaeological record, the same pattern emerges in culture after culture, continent after continent, separated by oceans and millennia, and every possible difference in language and belief. The dead are cleaned. The dead are positioned. The dead are given objects, food, tools, weapons, flowers, ochre pigment pressed into the skin. The dead are sent somewhere, even when no one can agree on exactly where that somewhere is. Because the one thing every human culture in recorded history shares is the belief that death is not simply an ending. It is a transition, a crossing, a departure to somewhere the living cannot follow but must acknowledge. Researcher David Klass, who studies death rituals across cultures, found that even in societies with radically different beliefs about the afterlife, the structure of mourning rituals is strikingly similar. There is a period of separation where the community acknowledges the loss. There is a liminal period where the dead are neither fully gone nor fully present. And there is a reintegration where the living are welcomed back into the rhythm of ordinary life. The names change. The prayers change. The clothing and the food and the music change. The architecture of grief does not. You have inherited that architecture. It lives in the reason you need a funeral even when you know, rationally, that the person you loved is already gone. It lives in the reason you keep their objects, their handwriting, their voicemails saved on a phone 2 upgrades old. It lives in the reason certain anniversaries hit you like a wall even years after the loss. Your brain is still running ancient software that was written in the era when grief had to be collective, because a loss of one member of a small group was a threat to the survival of everyone. The ritual was never really about the dead. It was always about the living. It was about transforming unbearable absence into something the mind could hold. A story, a ceremony, a place to put the flowers. A moment where the whole group stopped moving, looked at what had happened, and said together, "This mattered. You mattered. The fact that you are gone is not something we will simply walk past." And here is the counterintuitive truth that the entire archaeological record quietly insists on. The more cognitively advanced a species, the more elaborate its response to death. Homo Naledi placed its dead in a hidden chamber. Neanderthals brought flowers. Early Homo sapiens buried children with ornaments. And then, as cognition expanded, the rituals expanded with it. Pyramids, catacombs, elaborate tombs carved into mountains, whole cities built for the dead, beside the cities built for the living. The Taj Mahal, the Colosseum of the Dead in Paris, the war memorials that line the centers of cities across every country on Earth. The size of the monument is proportional to the size of the brain that could not simply let go. And you cannot simply let go either. Tonight, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting with a body they are not ready to give up. Somewhere, someone is choosing what to bury with a person they loved. Somewhere, a community is gathering around a grave not because they believe it will change anything, but because gathering is the only language grief has ever had. They are doing what Homo Naledi did in the dark of that cave 300,000 years ago. They are doing what you will do when your moment comes. Not because a culture told them to, not because a religion required it, but because a brain that is large enough to love someone is also large enough to know when they are gone. And that knowledge demands a response. It always has. It always will. Someone you love is going to die. And when they do, you will not be lost. You will be ancient. You will be doing the oldest human thing there is. You will be refusing to simply walk away.